So the crazy thing about like Yu-Gi-Oh! In the new format is that you never know what you're playing. But Madara, my cat, decided to make it a lot more interesting and made sure I didn't know what I was playing. So the Las Vegas Regional, I got 10th place. It was extremely fun, really exciting to be there. And I actually played a deck that I have played against so much, but never played the deck in itself. And there are some super secret spice cards, as well as how I approached a particular event that allowed me to get to the position that I am. And I could have gotten top 8, which would have been my invite. Unfortunately, I think we needed 5 more people for it to be top 16 or whatever, but it was still a really a fun event. And I want to share this information for you because even if you don't play this particular deck, you can use these concepts to be able to win in your game. So going into the event, I already knew the best decks in the format, or at least from my tier list, because I actually use my own information. Eldritch, Flew Under Ease. I didn't expect to see any Drytron decks, but I expected to see a lot of Despia because it was extremely cheap, and it's also already seen as one of the best decks, and of course Swordsoul. So I wanted to be able to build a deck within the constraints of what Madara picked to be able to win against those decks as easily as possible. Madara actually picked Swordsoul, and I have some really good spicy tech, so go ahead and watch for the video so you can figure those out and why I played those particular cards. And he picked a deck that I had no idea how to play, but learned along the way. I had legitimately maybe like 30 minutes of playtesting before the entire event to figure this out. And if you guys want to see a vlog, let me know. But let's go ahead and get into the deck profile so you can get an in-depth explanation on why I played certain cards. We're going to start off with the Swordsoul monsters. There's going to be 3 copies of Long Yuan here, 3 copies of Moye, and 2 copies of Taya. For any Swordsoul player, you guys know this is fairly standard. One thing that I did like about this particular deck is that when I played in my other 2 regionals, sometimes I would go into time. And I completely hate going into time because more often than not, it meant that I drew with somebody. This deck almost made sure I did not draw because Long Yuan can burn for 12. And then there's a Synchro monster that can burn for 2,400 damage. That is 3,600 damage in 1 turn. And I actually really do like that Konami is incorporating burn or life point gain mechanics in some of their top meta decks, meaning that time gets solved. There's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser. Love how the burn strategy is being implemented in certain decks and not just being its own concept. Moye was actually the worst level 4. Taya was amazing. I love that it can send worms to the graveyard and banish monsters, which allow me to use Adara to add my banished cards from the hand, basically secure resource. Also, one more thing I wanted to say about this particular Swordsoul deck is that I was blind going second. I went second every single game, and it's a very simple reason why. Those top decks that I just listed, not only do they make really weak boards that Swordsoul can break going second, I can OTK you like right off of that. And a lot of my games literally went, oh, I lost a dice roll. Whatever will I do? And they're like, I'll take first. And they make their board. I'm like, ho, ho, ho. Break your board, OTK. Like every single time. It was pretty intense in that way. I think a lot of my matches did go to game 3 because then they like side dimensional barrier and see them. And I'm like, oh, sad panda. But then we go first and we get to side our floodgates too. So it was pretty good in that regard. You know, we were okay. Next, I played 3 copies of Incredible Ecclesia. This is a card I feel you could play 2 of, but I played 3 for a very specific reason. It wasn't for these cards just to summon this. It was for my super secret spicy tech that I decided to get a little wacky with, but I understand my limitations as a player, especially seeing that I do not know how to play this deck. And this deck was built on being able to break your opponent's board and OTK'd. I play one of my favorite cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! And no, it's not Ghost Bell or Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood. I thought about siding those cards, but I actually played the Swordsoul Iris, the Iris Swordsoul. And there's actually a couple of reasons why I think that this card is low-key cracked. So the first reason is that I have a very small brain. I am not a old school hardened veteran Swordsoul player that knows the ins and outs and everything about this deck. I understand that. I also understand that I need to go second and OTK my opponent because if I destroy their Mirror Jade, which I did often, they would destroy my board, meaning that they would leave me wide open. With that being said, Swordsoul Iris is a searchable card through the Shishao monster. Your Synchro monster can be special summoned off of Incredible Ecclesia and can summon herself from the hand to the side of the field as long as a monster is negated. Her effects are also incredible, dog. I'm telling you. a lot of times that my opponent would use a card like Branded Opening, you could chain Incredible Ecclesia to summon Swordsoul Iris, and players would still special summon from their deck to their side of the field, which would get you 2 free cards, and then you really win, you know what I mean? But the crazy thing about this card is that it has 2 great effects. One, to destroy special summon monsters from the extra deck, which does force your opponent to play differently. And the second one is to be able to draw cards if your opponent special summons from the deck. Using cards like Elixir Sanguine or Branded Opening, yes, you can add to the hand, but players still chose to special summon to the side of the field. This card was completely incredible. Also, there are certain situations where you can't put enough damage on board with Swordsoul, and all you got to do is negate a monster on the field, or have a negated monster on the field, and then you can summon Swordsoul Iris to your side of the field. It was incredibly easy to do that. There were so many times where I just OTK'd with this particular card, or was able to set up enough presence, like negating a monster on my opponent's turn with Yugioh and then summoning Swordsoul Iris, which would literally outright win the game. This card was actually awesome, but if you don't want to play it, it's perfectly fine. You can go ahead and drop it to 40, and Swordsoul is still a great deck. Drop this card and it'll be 40, and Swordsoul is a great deck. Next, there's 3 copies of Emergence and 1 copy of Blackout. Yes, I blind went second and still mained boarded the Swordsoul Blackout. Reason is a lot of times I did banish this from deck with Yugioh's effect to be able to get an additional token. That actually did come up way more than I thought. And also, there are times where my opponent was like, yo, you go first. And I was like, huh? Like, I wasn't expecting nobody else to be on blind going second. And, you know, Blackout does help for that particular situation. But Blackout's actually really good. I keep it post side knowing that I'm going first. And I'll explain that why in a bit. One thing that I do feel that players are doing incredibly wrong with Swordsoul is that they're playing Swordsoul and then demanding to go first, but half their deck is going second cards. If you look at Swordsoul innately, this deck just has so much crackback. Incredible Ecclesia gets you a free Swordsoul monster to your side of the field and is a special summon. Swordsoul Iris can special summon herself off of negating a monster effect. Moye and Long Yuan allow you to chain block into some of your most deadliest cards, as well as Taye, into some of your most deadliest cards to prevent your opponent from stopping your board breaking cards. And then you main board like up to 9 cards that are ridiculously great going second. Like, yo, I decided to max out on all of them. This was genuinely the reason why I was extremely confident playing this deck. Madara picked the most amazing deck because this is the answer to all of the meta. If I'm going against Despia, I would special summon Vishuda to my side of the field. And a lot of times they will respect me and try to get rid of the Vishuda, whether they banish the Vishuda with the Mirror Jade, or they would use the effect of Branded in red. Then I would chain Heavenly Dragon Circle. It didn't always happen, but if I were to chain Heavenly Dragon Circle, getting rid of my Tenyi Spirit Vishuda, not only do I search a worm monster from my deck to my hand, they have to banish with Mirror Jade still, so they lose their Mirror Jade, which turns off their Branded in red, and immediately I just go from game from there. If not, then I just use Vishuda to force Branded in red, or whatever it is, whatever play that they had left, and then just OTK since their board is all out and open. Like, this was easily the best card, and I feel that this deck is served very much better going second, because it can just break so many boards in the format right now. Ashina and Adara came up so much. Free extender to your side of the field. It's like, this summons this or this to be able to get a free Synchro 8. And then Adara is really good because of Taye. You normal summon Taye, you Synchro, or you banish a monster like Long Yuan, and then you can send Adara, which will add the Long Yuan to your hand. So really, really good follow-up. Shatana is great because it's a free level 4 monster. I never use this effect, unfortunately, but it's a great Yu-Gi-Oh card. Next is 2 copies of Vessel. I was really... I wanted to play 3 and 3 of this, but 2 and 2 wound up being the exact number. It wound up being perfect. A lot of times, players were maining DD Crow, and they Crow like my Tenyi Vishuda, and I'd just be like, Vessel for another one. Pluses, and then you get to add another Tenyi monster, and it's really over for them from there. So that also came up. So a lot of players are playing hand traps, and I think hand traps are incredibly useless in the particular tournament that I was going to. DD Crow is probably the best hand trap alongside Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, but I didn't want to rely on my opponent or me drawing a hand trap and using that one hand trap to stop their board. I want you to make your board. I want you to enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh! Have fun, makes the board, because when I go second, the deck is built on being able to break your board, so why do I care about stopping you from making your board? 3 copies of Lightning Storm to address back row heavy decks or front row heavy decks. I really had a fear of Flundereese because I lost to it in every single tournament, and this was the card that I decided to go with because not only does it help me address Flundereese boards, it also allows me to address back row heavy decks. Going back, I'd probably make it Raigeki because Raigeki is a little easier to play with, but I only drew it once, and the one time that I drew it, it came up. 3 copies of Forbidden Chalice. This card is completely cracked. I expected to see more token collectors. I didn't see enough token collectors, but I would have chaliced them anyways. But this card works so well with Swordsoul Iris. There's so many times where I would start off my combo, my opponent starts to like trying to interact with me, I chalice it, and because their monster's negated, I can summon Iris to my side of the build, then I'll summon Shishao, and then I'll continue to build my board, and then just OTK him. So this card was amazing. Triple Tactics Talents won so many games. I never used the effect to look at hand now that I think about it throughout the tournament, because I just never needed it. But the effect that take my opponent's monster was amazing because I'm like, yo, thank you for the free damage. Now let me OTK you. And then being able to just vibe check anything that I needed or get 2 free cards. And then Pot of Desires, never punished, guys. I would go through banish 10 cards and never lose a thing. It did not matter. With Pot of Desires, it was 2 free cards inside of the deck. It was literally Pot of Greed, ban Pot of Desires. For my extra deck, it was extremely standard. 1 Battle on the Floor, 1 Shinging, 1 Long Yuan guy. A lot of people, if they were forced to go first, if somebody was like blind go second, they try to make Battle on the Floor, Shishao, Swordsoul Blackout. My board was I'd made Long Yuan, Shishao, and the Draco Berserker and draw 2 cards. Because if you were going to crack the Baron board, then you're going to crack this board. The only difference is I'm going to draw 2 cards because I didn't respect anybody playing Nibiru this format. And with that being said, I did get Nibiru once. I hate you, George. Don't know why you're playing Nibiru. You're trash. I love you, dog. Keep doing your thing. I still wind up winning that match, but he did Nibiru me, and I was like, why are you playing Nibiru? 2 Shishao, 1 Draco Berserker, 1 Xiaofeng. This card never came up. Boxia, Adamantimator Drigai, that never came up. This card came up. It came up against George. He Nibiru'd me, and then I like crash into the Nibiru, and it was rough. This came up so much throughout the entire event because you just make Crimson Blader and attack over their monster, and it's almost an FTK against them. If you can't win that turn, you just make this card, you attack over one of their monsters against like the Despia or the Swordsoul Mirror match, and then they can't play Yu-Gi-Oh! So you just get another turn. I'm dropping this card. I don't think that it was necessary. And I'm dropping a Monk. I don't think that these 3 of them were necessary. Well, I will run, thinking about maybe running a Link or an Exceed monster. Maybe a Baguska, because there were way too many times where somebody debarriered me, and I got sad. Very, very, very sad. It wasn't fun. For the sideboard, I was extremely scared of opponents using like Zombie World on me and stuff. So I played 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. These never were sided in. I just never had that fear of any of that. And yeah, this is probably the unused slot. These were going to be Night Beams because in a lot of matchups, I felt that players would like have a D barrier face down, or they'd be able to use the effect of the particular card, like Branded in Red when I Cosmic Cyclone did. But unfortunately, I mean, maybe the Night Beams would have came up to be able to stop D barriers, but never really happened. 1 copy of Harpy's Feather Duster. I cited this card often depending on the matchup. My 2 losses were against a Sunvalon. I think Sunvalon is one of the best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! I went into the event knowing that I was going to lose to those strategies. Did not expect to play it as much as I did. And again, I'll explain my matchups right after this. 1 copy of Red Reboot. This came in every game too. Anytime I knew I was going second because of D-Barrier. And of course, Flew Under Reach trap cards, because I'm very scared of that deck. Dino Wrestler Pinkertraps, of course, is the card I cited in going second because it allows you to answer so many things. A lot of players put Mirror Jade in defense, so like Pinkertops is a monster that could address the Mirror Jade problem and force the Branded in Red. So it was a pretty good card, but unfortunately I never seen it. And let's talk about the actual real sideboard cards, because these are the only 9 that I would 100% keep. So game 1, normally I lose the dice roll. Oh no, what will I do? Y'all take first. You take first. Or I win the dice roll, I'm like, you go first. I don't feel like I'm having a great hand. They set up their board. I break their board, they OTK. All right, OTK them. Game 2. more often than not, sometimes it was the exact same thing. They set up their board, I OTK'd them anyways. But there were times where they won game 2 and I conceded fairly fast because I knew I could just side these cards in and they were auto wins. Anti-Spell Fragrance beats half of the meta right now. If you go first and you flip up Anti-Spell Fragrance in the draw phase, especially when you can protect it with a bet on the floor, meaning that your opponent's going to either open 2 outs, a card to out your Anti-Spell Fragrance and your bet on the floor, then you're probably going to win. This slowed down Despias as they have to set their spell cards, and going back, after they set their spell cards, like their branded fusion, I would Sword Soul blackout them and then proceeded to OTK them just to make sure there was no branded and reds and stuff in the graveyard after they put a Despia monster into the graveyard. This card is literally cracked against Flunder, Despia, and a whole bunch of other decks that are spell reliant. And then, of course, D-Barrier for Sword Soul, Despia, and basically any mono type archetype. I personally feel that these Floodgates are very fine in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because while they are very powerful right now, they're very specific, needing spell heavy decks and mono extra deck heavy decks to be able to thrive in order for them to happen. This is way more fair than losing to like Artifact Scythelocks and Protoslox and stuff like that. And then there's the Super Secret Spice card. Me and June actually pulled this card out due to us keep on losing to Flundereese. Our team hate Flundereese. And we actually decided to side 3 copies of Mistaken Arrest. This card was completely godly. So the main reason why is because when we go against Flundereese, we didn't want them playing on our turn. And when they would start their turn, they would go the Flundereese trap card or the spell card if you normal summon to summon their Robina or their Eaglin, and then they would chain their Robina. What we would do is chain link 3 Mistaken Arrest. They'd be able to add the Eaglin to their hand, but since they can't search with Robina, they won't be able to normal summon, meaning that we can continue to play our turn exactly the way without any interaction for them. This was a complete blowout against them. Like, it was incredible against them. Also, when going first, we can just set it face down and then use it on our opponent when they use Pot of Duality. Our opponent can't D-Shifter this, unlike Droll and Lockbird. This card is just miraculous, but it's also good against Despia search decks. It's good against any deck that Droll and Lockbird will beat. This card is amazing against too, and it's just an awesome Yu-Gi-Oh card. Maybe buy them before they skyrocket in price, but that might have already happened since I've already told you to buy them before I skyrocket in price. So for my rounds, I played against Tri-Brigade. I 2-1'd him. Really good player. My round 2, I played... I don't remember. I think I played against Flundereese. I 2-1'd him. Really good player. Shout out to you, Adam. He actually wound up topping. My round 3, I lost to Sunvalon. He was a great player. He 2-0'd me. Or that was round 4. That was actually round 4. Round 3 was Flundereese. I don't remember my round 2 opponent. But round 4, I believe, was the plant guy. Oh, no, I was right. That is round 3. Round 3 was the plant guy. He 2-0'd me. And the reason why is because I let that deck go first. And with one card, they make 4 disruptions. And I got to try to break that board. Didn't have the correct cards to break the board, and then game 2, he actually opened the double out. I didn't open the most solid board, and he opened the Raigeki and a Cosmic Cyclone in case I had a anti-spell freaker. So I was losing that particular game. Round 4, I believe I played against Despia. That was 2-0 because I built the deck to beat Despia. Round 5, I played against Despia again. That was a 2-0. Round 6, I played against Plants, and almost the exact same thing happened. He went first, and he made full board, couldn't crack it. I went first, I flipped up Anti-Spell Fragrance, so, you know, that's what happened. And then in his third game, he had double dimensional barriers, so, you know, sad faces for me, right? Sad reacts only. In my last round, I played against Despia again, and, you know, this deck does a pretty good job against, like, you know, the top meta deck. So, ultimately, I had a lot of fun, and I think that was the most important thing. I had no idea how to play this deck, and I kind of learned throughout the way, so that was also an interesting thing. And I look forward to doing more events in the future, as it's going to be really fun to have my cat pick a deck and try to top with it again. Thank you so much, guys. I really do appreciate it. Everything that you guys have been doing, supporting, and everything in between. If you guys want to see more deck profiles like this, go ahead and let me know. But also post down below in the comment section, what exactly do you think? Any questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead and let me know, as I'll catch you on the next video.